The sign was still there when I pulled into my own driveway. For sale. Priced to move. Priced to move. Open house this Saturday. I sat in my car for a full minute just staring at it. The plastic stake was pushed deep into the flower bed I'd spent 3 weekends building last spring. Whoever planted it there had done it carefully, deliberately, not just shoved it in the ground. They had made sure it was perfectly straight. I knew whose hands had done that. I went inside without pulling it out. I needed to think before I touched anything. My house is not a mansion. It is a 3-bedroom craftsman in a quiet neighborhood outside of Columbus, worth around $615,000. In the current market, I bought it 6 years ago with money I had saved since my mid-20s, a decade of working as a project manager, skipping vacations, eating lunch at my desk, turning down things I wanted so I could have the thing I actually needed, which was a home that was mine and no one else's. I paid the down payment myself. My name is the only name on the deed. I have no mortgage. I own it outright. My brother knew all of this. He had always known it. He also knew that I had added a provision to the property 2 years ago when I worked with an estate attorney to set up a revocable living trust. The house was transferred into the trust as an asset. I did it for boring, practical reasons. Estate planning, probate avoidance. Nothing dramatic. My attorney had walked me through it the way you walk someone through filing taxes. I signed the papers, paid the fee, and forgot about it. I did not know at the time that it would end up being the thing that saved me. My brother is 4 years younger than me. He is charming in the way that some people are charming, easily, automatically, without effort, and without intention. People like him the moment they meet him. He's always been the one her mother calls first when something good happens, and the one she calls first when something goes wrong. And somehow he remains the one she calls, even when the thing that went wrong was caused entirely by him. His wife had started a business 2 years ago, a boutique retail concept, she called it, curated home goods. They'd taken out a small business loan, put some of their savings in, and then when the business started struggling, they'd asked my parents for help. My parents gave what they could then. They came to me. I said no. I want to be clear about that. I said no politely. I said no with a full explanation, and I said no while offering a different kind of support, connecting my brother with a financial advisor, helping them look at restructuring options, being present in ways that did not involve writing a check I would not get back. My mother cried. My brother told me I was being selfish. His wife stopped returning my texts. That was 8 months ago. What I did not know, because no one told me, was that the debt had continued to grow. The business had failed completely. By late autumn, creditors had been calling. My brother had taken out a second loan to try to cover the first one, which is the kind of decision that compounds a crisis instead of solving it. By the time I found that for sale sign in my flower bed, my brother owed somewhere in the range of $190,000 across 2 lenders. My house was worth 3 times that. I found out about the sign on a Thursday afternoon. I had come home early because a meeting was canceled. If the meeting had not been canceled, I would have come home at my usual time, which is around 6 o'clock in the evening, and the realtor who had apparently been showing my house to a young couple for the past 40 minutes would already have been gone, and I might not have understood what I was walking into until much later. Instead, I pulled into my driveway, saw the sign, walked to my front door, put my key in the lock and opened the door to find 3 people standing in my kitchen. My brother's mother-in-law was there. I recognized her immediately. She was a small woman in her 60s with silver hair and an air of complete authority that she had never once directed at me in kindness. Standing next to her was a man I did not recognize in a blazer and good shoes. And beside him were a couple who appeared to be in their early 30s, looking at my kitchen backsplash with the specific focused attention of people who are imagining their future life in a space. My brother's mother-in-law turned when she heard the door. She did not look alarmed. She looked briefly inconvenienced, and then she composed herself into something, approximating a smile. She said, "We're in the middle of a showing." I set my bag down on the entryway table. I took off my coat. I hung it on the hook I had installed myself the first week I moved in. "Who's showing?" I said. The man in the blazer, who I had now identified as the realtor, stepped forward with the particular energy of someone who has been trained to de-escalate. He introduced himself. He said the property had been listed on behalf of the family. He said the owners had authorized the sale. I looked at him for a moment. "Can I see the listing?" I said. He pulled out his phone. He showed me the listing, my address, my house, listed at $59,000, which was intentionally below market. Price, as the sign said, to move. Listed 3 days ago. Under the ownership section, it showed my name. I didn't sign any listing agreement. I said. The realtor frowned. He looked at my brother's mother-in-law. She said, "The paperwork is in order. I'd like to see it." I said. She said the attorney handling the transaction had everything. I said, "I'm going to need you all to leave my house." The young couple left quickly. They did not want to be part of whatever this was. The realtor lingered, uncertain, and I asked him a second time, and he left. My brother's mother-in-law stood in my kitchen for an additional 30 seconds, making a point of not appearing to be in a hurry before she walked out. I locked the door. I stood in the kitchen for a moment. I looked at the backsplash the couple had been examining. I had chosen those tiles myself. I had carried them home in the back of my car. Then I called my attorney. Her name is not one I will use here, but I have worked with her for years, and the first thing she said when I explained the situation was, "Don't touch anything. Don't pull the sign. I'll call you back in 20 minutes. She called back in 15. What she had found by pulling the property records was not what I expected. The listing had been created using a document that purported to be a limited power of attorney, a document that appeared to bear my signature, notarized and dated for months ago, granting my brother's mother-in-law the authority to act as my agent in real estate transactions. My attorney had not prepared this document. I had not signed this document. I had never seen this document. Here's the other thing, my attorney said. I waited. The property record shows the house is held in your living trust. The trust is the title holder of record. A power of attorney granted by you as an individual does not convey authority to transact on behalf of the trust. The trustee has to authorize any transfer. You are the trustee. You didn't authorize anything. There was a moment of silence. So they can't sell it? I said. They never could, she said. The trust structure blocks it. Even if the power of attorney were real, which it isn't, and we are going to address that, it wouldn't have been sufficient. Any title company doing their job would have caught it at closing. I sat down on my kitchen floor, not because I was distressed. I sat down because the information was large and I Needed a moment to let it arrange itself. Inside me, someone had forged my signature on a legal document. Someone had found a notary to stamp it. Someone had taken that document to a real estate agent and used it to list my house without my knowledge, priced below market, hoping to close quickly before I noticed. And it still would not have worked because 2 years ago, I had moved my house into a trust for boring practical reasons, and no one had thought to check. What do I do now? I said. Tonight, my attorney said, you document everything. Photograph the sign. Photograph the listing on his phone. Did you get a screenshot? I had. Before the realtor left, while he was still showing me his phone, I had taken a photo of his screen without making a point of it. Good, she said. Tomorrow morning, I file a complaint with the county recorder's office and we report the forged notarization to the state. Then you decide whether you want to pursue criminal charges. I had already decided. I called my brother that night. He answered on the second ring, which told me he did not know yet that the showing had gone wrong. Hey, he said, in the same tone he has used my entire life, easy and familiar, as if nothing between us had ever been complicated. I came home today, I said, and there was a for sale sign in my front yard. A pause. Just a breath too long. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. Your mother-in-law was in my kitchen, showing my house to buyers. Another pause. Then he shifted. I have known him my whole life, and I know what it sounds like when he shifts from the relaxed version of himself into the defensive version. And it is a subtle change, just a slight hardening at the edges, but I can always hear it. We were trying to solve a problem, he said. The plan was to pay you back. You would have been paid back from the sale. You forged my signature, I said. That's a strong way to put it. It is the accurate way to put it, I said. Someone signed my name on a power of attorney document and had it notarized. That's forgery. That's fraud, he said. Something about family, he said. Something about how I had refused to help when he asked. He said that her parents were stressed, that his wife was devastated, that he had been out of options. He said that I had always had more than I needed and that he had always had less and that he had never understood how I could watch him struggle and do nothing. I let him finish. I need you to hear me very clearly. I said, the house is in a trust. Your power of attorney, even if I had signed it, which I did not, would not have been sufficient to authorize a sale. You were never going to be able to close this transaction. The only thing you accomplished was committing a crime. He was quiet. My attorney is filing reports tomorrow, I said, with the county recorder and with the state. If there is a fraudulent notary stamp on that document, and I believe there is, that notary is also facing professional consequences. The real estate agent is going to be interviewed. Everyone who touched this is going to be asked to explain themselves. You're really going to do this to your own family, he said. It was not a question. You did this, I said. I'm just filing the paperwork. I hung up. I did not sleep well that night, but not because I was uncertain. Uncertainty is one kind of sleeplessness. What I had was the other kind, the kind that comes when you have made a decision that is correct and you are simply waiting for morning to act on it. My attorney filed the complaints the following morning. The county recorder flagged the forged document and placed an additional notation on the property record. The state notary board launched an inquiry into the notary whose stamp appeared on the power of attorney, a woman who it later emerged had a professional relationship with my brother's mother-in-law that went back several years. The real estate agent had not known the listing was fraudulent. He had been presented with documentation that appeared legitimate and had proceeded in good faith. He cooperated immediately and fully. My brother's mother-in-law did not cooperate. Her attorney advised her to say nothing, which is of course her right, and which did not prevent the documentation from speaking for itself. My parents called me separately. My mother called first and she cried, which she often does when consequences arrive that she did not choose. She said she had not known about the forgery that she had thought my brother had, found a way to solve things legally, that she had not asked questions she should have asked. I believe her. I also told her that what she had known and chosen not to tell me was that they were planning to sell my house to pay his debt. She had known that part. She had said nothing. I thought it would work out, she said. For whom? I said. She did not have an answer. My father called a day later and said less. He is a quieter person. He told me he was sorry. He told me he had made a mistake by staying out of it instead of stopping it. He said my brother had told him the paperwork was handled and he had not pushed. I appreciated his honesty more than I was able to say in that conversation, but I appreciated it. The criminal referral went to the district attorney's office 6 weeks after I made the initial report. My attorney told me these processes move slowly and that the wait is not a sign of inaction. She was right. 3 months after I pulled into my driveway and found that sign, my brother's mother-in-law was charged with 1 count of forgery and 1 count of attempted real estate fraud. The notary who had stamped the document was charged separately and surrendered her commission. My brother was not charged. There was not sufficient evidence to prove that he had direct knowledge of the forgery rather than simply having facilitated the arrangement in ways that stopped short of criminal liability. I do not know if that is the accurate version of events. I know what I believe, but I also understand that what I believe and what can be proven are different things, and the law operates on the second category. His mother-in-law took a plea agreement. She avoided prison time, but was sentenced to 3 years of probation, a substantial fine, and was ordered to pay restitution that covered my legal fees. The notary lost her license permanently. The 4ASA I sign has been gone for a long time now. The flower bed has recovered. I planted new things in the spring. Nothing I plant carefully, just whatever was on sale at the nursery on a Saturday when I had an hour to spare. The house still belongs to me. It has always belonged to me. The trust document made that harder to challenge. But the truth is that it belonged to me, regardless, in every way that matters, because I built a life in it and paid for it and chose it, and no one else ever had the right to take it. I do not speak to my brother. I do not know if that will always be true. What I know is that it is true right now, and right now is what I have to work with. My mother calls. I answer when I can. We talk about other things the way families sometimes do when the real things are too large to carry in a phone call. She asks about the house occasionally, not to reopen anything, just out of habit, I think, the way parents ask about the things they watched you work for. It's good, I tell her. The house is good. That is the truest answer I know how to give. I spent a long time thinking that protecting what I had built meant being careful with money, working consistently, not taking risks I couldn't absorb. And those things matter, but what actually protected this house was a document I had filed quietly on a Tuesday afternoon 2 years ago in a law office on the 4th floor of a building downtown for reasons that had nothing to Do with my brother or his debts or his wife's failed business or his mother-in-law's certainty that she could move faster than I could notice. It was just good planning. Boring, practical, unremarkable good. Planning. Sometimes that is enough. Sometimes that is everything. There's a version of the story where I lose the house. I've thought about that version a lot. If I had come home at my usual time, if the meeting had been canceled, if I had never sat down with an estate attorney 2 years ago on an unremarkable Tuesday afternoon to do paperwork that felt at the time like the least exciting thing I had done all month. In that version, the sale might have moved faster than I could catch it. In that version, my brother's mother-in-law walks away with a closed transaction and a problem solved, and I come home to a house that is technically still mine, but has been violated in a way I might spend years untangling. That version didn't happen, but it almost did, and the distance between those two versions was not luck. It was preparation I had done without. Knowing I would need it, what I keep coming back to is this. The people who try to take my home were not stupid. They had a forged document. They had a notary stamp. They had a realtor and a listing and buyers walking through my kitchen. They had planned this out. They moved quickly and quietly, and they chose not to tell me because they knew if I found out I would stop it. That takes a certain kind of intelligence. The kind turned entirely inward toward protecting one interest at the expense of everyone else's. And it still wasn't enough because the thing they hadn't accounted for was that I had done the quiet work too. I had been thorough when there was no urgency to be thorough. I had built a legal structure around what I owned, not out of fear or suspicion, but simply because it was the right and careful thing to do. That's the part one wants to sit with. Not the outcome, not the charges, not the plea deal, the part where being methodical, unglamorous, unsexy, sitting in an attorney's office on a Tuesday. Methodical turned out to be the only thing that mattered. My brother told me I was selfish when I said no to the loan. I've thought about that word. I think what he meant was that I had something and he needed it and I wouldn't give it. And in his accounting, that made me the problem, but selfishness and self-preservation are not the same thing. I had built something over a decade of careful decisions and I had the right to protect it. That's not selfishness. That's knowing the difference between what you owe the people you love and what you are allowed to keep for yourself. The hard part is that I do still love my brother. That didn't go away. What went away was my willingness to absorb the consequences of his choices, and those are different things. What this experience taught me, the kind of teaching that settles into you slowly, not all at once, is that integrity is a long game. You don't build it for the crisis. You build it before the crisis, in the ordinary moments when nothing is at stake and no one is watching. I filed those trust documents because it was responsible, not because I was afraid. I maintained my own finances, made my own decisions, kept my own counsel because those were good habits, not because I foresaw any of this. And when the moment came, all of that quiet, consistent work was exactly what I needed. The same is true for how I responded. I didn't argue. I didn't collapse. I didn't make threats I wasn't prepared to follow through on. I acted calmly because I had enough practice making hard decisions to know that panic is expensive and clarity is not. The house is still mine. The flower bed is growing back. Some things once you've protected them, stay protected. And I think that's worth saying plainly for anyone who's been told their caution is excessive, their planning is paranoid, their refusal to hand over. What they've built is cold. It isn't cold. It's just evidence that you understood before anyone else did what. You are actually worth